Guess the riddle. The United States is ready to start fighting for this island the size of Saudi Arabia, where only 15% of the territory is habitable. Less than 60,000 people live on an area of more than 2 million square kilometers. And despite this, up to the 90s, women of indigenous peoples here were forcibly inserted uterine spirals in order to control the birth rate. Monopolism rules everything here. One airline, one ferry company, one telephone company, and no competition. There are almost no roads, and residents prefer to travel by sled drawn by animals. It is here that there is 10% of the world's freshwater reserves, 13% of undiscovered oil reserves, and 30% of gas reserves are stored. And yes, this is Greenland, the island that the whole world is staring at today. After all, the president of the most powerful superpower on the planet, the United States, is targeting him. Why does he need it? For the sake of rich mineral resources, strategic position, or secret scientific discoveries? Or maybe in order to blackmail both enemies and allies, or even completely change the world order? Let's figure it out. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word Greenland? Cold, glaciers, and miles of snow-covered land. And once upon a time, well, about 5 million years ago, it was so warm here that forests grew everywhere and elephant ancestors roamed. That's why the Vikings named this place Greenland, the Green Land. However, it was like this for a short time. Due to the economic activities of the Vikings in the Little Ice Age, Greenland had turned into an island covered with ice by almost 80% by the 16th century. But this did not stop the Danish crown, which decided to make Greenland its own. Denmark revived extinct Viking settlements and developed shipping. However, no one dreamed of living on a cold island where they could earn money only by fishing. By the beginning of the 20th century, the population of Greenland was only 14,000 people, and Greenland is slightly larger in area than Mexico, for example. 13 million people lived there at the same time. And how did America become interested in this not too attractive place? During World War II, America built 14 military bases here under an agreement with Denmark. And in 1946, America wanted to buy Greenland for a generous $100 million, but Denmark refused. The American military bases on the island remained. The Tula base became the main one. It was here that the missile attack early warning system was located during the Cold War. Tula allowed the Americans to conduct operations in the skies over the Soviet Union and the Arctic Ocean, track submarines, and conduct exercises in the event of a military conflict. Everything seems to be fine. Shake hands with the Danes, build your military bases. Why try to annex these eternally cold, unprofitable land? Why try to annex these eternally cold, unprofitable land? To understand this, let's take a brief look at modern Greenland. It is an autonomous territory within Denmark. It has its own parliament and language, but Denmark controls the island's foreign policy. It can be said that it fully supports the island. The costs for it amount to about 600 to 700 million US dollars per year. Greenland earns money from fish and shrimp. They account for 90% of all exports. As in Viking times, you have to import literally everything you need to live. Therefore, the island is critically dependent on trade relations and subsidies from Denmark. Life here is one of the most expensive on the planet. And yes, it is more expensive than in the USA. You'll pay about $6 to $7 for a dozen eggs, $3.50 for 2 pounds of potatoes, and almost $5 for 5 bananas. The average salary is about $2,000, but locals often feed on hunting and fishing, so few people buy meat here. But a modest 20 gigabytes of internet costs $82. The population of the island is about 56,000 people, and it turns out that the economy here simply does not have the opportunity to develop. There are minerals, but they are all trapped under a layer of ice. Why would America, or indeed anyone else, needs such an unprofitable and costly territory? Donald Trump wanted to buy Greenland back in 2019 during his first term as president. He offered Denmark $600 million for this, but was sharply refused. But his ambitions have not gone away. Already in January 2025, Trump declared that Greenland was needed by the United States for national security purposes. People actually don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to Greenland, but if they do, they should give it up because we need it to protect national security, he said during one of his press conferences. Trump said he would annex the island to the United States and did not even rule out the possibility of military action to do so. The Greenlanders themselves were not happy with Mr. President's statements. According to polls, 85% of them view such a scenario negatively. Greenland's Prime Minister Agid said that the island should not be part of Denmark or the United States. Knowing about Trump's love of populism, many assumed this was another ploy by the president to simulate violent activity. He loves attention to himself and loud words. You can't take that away. While wars are going on in the world and America itself is on the verge of an economic crisis and is fighting with China, Trump is unlikely to start a conflict for the sake of a frozen piece of land somewhere on the edge of the planet. Or will it? While Trump's son posted videos on social media with residents of Greenland who dream of becoming part of the United States, Denmark allocated 2 billion euros for the defense of the Arctic region. It's a good effect after the words of a populist politician, isn't it? Let's take a deeper look at the reasons why the US leadership wants to annex Greenland. Let's start with the most explicit and logically sound ones. The first thing that comes to mind is them, rare earth materials. Yes, the very ones that Trump wants to get access to from Ukraine and Russia. Greenland ranks 8th in the world in terms of reserves of rare earth metals. What are they for? The production of electronics, the development of green energy, modern optics, and metalworking. And this is just a basic list. Currently, the United States buys more than 70% of rare earth metals from its closest competitor, China. And back in 2024, before Trump's inauguration, American officials were able to convince the developer of Greenland's largest rare earth deposit to sell it not to the Chinese, but to New York-based Critical Metals. The deal amount is $5 million in cash and $211 million in shares of Critical Metals. Chinese entrepreneurs, by the way, offered much more, but the Americans turned out to be much more convincing. Greenlandic companies generally do not mind further attracting American investments. Well, do not forget that there is still enough oil and gas, uranium, gold, and diamonds in the bowels of the island. And we are talking only about the explored lands of Greenland, because most of the country is covered with ice, which has been actively melting recently due to global warming, simplifying access to rare minerals. Over the past few years, the ice has moved away from the coast by more than 25 kilometers. Meanwhile, in the world, well-known sources of minerals are drying up. If the United States gets access to Greenland's minerals, they will not only be able to ensure their independence from China in important areas, but also earn money by selling resources. Even if Greenland's ice suddenly stops melting, the American technical potential and fleet will allow the development of new deposits and production. The second advantage after minerals is air and water space. Greenland is located in the strategically important Arctic. It is the shortest route from Europe to North America. Why doesn't the United States turn these lands into a modern fortress that will stand up to China and Russia? Greenland is used as a transit point by many airlines flying from the eastern United States to Europe. Each flight is money that is received by the country through whose airspace the air routes pass. And pay attention to this section of the ocean between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. In the event of a conflict between Europe and Russia, this will be the main sea line of defense. Get control of it and you can steer the conflict at least on the water. And if there is no war, then the same area can be used for trade. Judging by the rising average temperatures across the planet, it's time for humanity to think about the Arctic sea route. And all the benefits from it will be received by the one who has power in this area. It's not for nothing that the Chinese were so interested in it that they wanted to build 2 airports in Greenland in 2018, but Denmark didn't let them do it. If America gets Greenland, it will become a monopolist, controlling all transportation in the North Atlantic. Can you already hear that inviting sound of cha-ching? Well, where without militarism? Now the United States is leasing territory from Denmark in order to deploy its military bases on it. The same Tula that we talked about earlier, but it's much safer to make these lands your own so that no one will definitely interfere with your military presence in the Arctic. The last time the United States annexed territories was back in 1947. If Trump manages to pull this off with Greenland, his name will stand next to the names of Andrew Johnson and Thomas Jefferson, who bought Alaska and Louisiana for the United States. Ratings will rise, people will rejoice, and the United States will become the second largest country in the world after Russia. And now, America is great again. In the event of an expansion of the territory, no one will dare to doubt the greatness of the 47th President of the United States. Well, after a serious conversation, let's step into our favorite territory, the territory of conspiracy theories. Don't pretend that you don't like them. So, conspiracy theory number 1. Greenland is a climate weapon. You already know that due to global warming, Greenland's ice is gradually melting. And what happens if they all turn into water? The level of the world's oceans will rise by 7 meters. New York, Tokyo, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Amsterdam, Dubai, and other megacities will go under the water. In this case, the world will face a new migration crisis, economic restructuring, and further climate shocks. And with the help of technology, a giant iceberg can be split off from Greenland, say the size of Ireland, and send him to drift into the ocean, threatening his detractors. It sounds crazy, even for Trump, but you haven't heard the following theory yet. Number 2 on our list is the United States reserves drinking water. There is already a shortage of fresh water in the world, and according to UN forecasts, by 2050, about 2 billion people on the planet will experience a shortage of it. Climate change, human activity, and global population growth are to blame for everything. But icebergs, of which Greenland can be said to consist entirely, are an excellent source of drinking water. This can become both a subject of the same trade and blackmail. Nothing to drink? Meet our conditions and we will help you. How do you like the theory that rivers and reservoirs in the United States can be poisoned by enemies using chemical weapons? That's when icebergs will be needed. Ice cannot be poisoned. The third conspiracy theory is about Elon Musk, an important person in Trump's team for whom he even came up with a separate position, head of the Department of Government Efficiency. Musk is developing artificial intelligence and neurochips, developing his space corporation, and is literally obsessed with the idea of a more technologically advanced human existence. So conspiracy theorists believe that Musk can build a whole network of scientific centers in Greenland hidden from most people. And there you can conduct as many experiments as you want, humane and not so much. It's almost like a Bond movie supervillain. Well, a conspiracy ending in the best traditions of horror films, Greenland's ice is melting. But what could be hiding under them? Dormant viruses and bacteria? Aggressive species of living creatures, the wreckage of spaceships. Maybe some American group of researchers has already found something interesting there, and that's why Trump needs Greenland so much? Well, we had some fun. Now let's get back to serious topics. It is already clear that Trump will not just leave Greenland. In early March 2025, he stated that he was confident that he would agree on the transfer of the island under his control. Minerals, land, and strategic advantages are cool, of course, but are they really worth the effort? What if we look deeper into the situation? What if Trump, with Greenland's help, wants to destroy NATO? I understand that that statement is loud, but let's take it in order. Donald Trump considers the fight against globalism to be one of his main tasks. This is a world order in which everyone ideally trades freely with everyone. Some states interfere in the affairs of others, access to any information is not limited, and barriers and prohibitions tend to be minimized. Trump considers globalists, representatives of democratic parties around the world, to be his rivals. He is particularly annoyed by Europe where, well, at least until recently, globalists ruled without much competition. The UN, WHO, the European Union, and other similar structures are rejected by the President of America as outdated and have lost their significance. That is why within a couple of months of Trump's official presidency, the United States has already managed to withdraw from the UN Human Rights Council, WHO, and the Paris Climate Agreement. For Trump, the sovereign state is at the center of everything, not international structures. The West has big problems, and the main one is neo-Marxists and globalists. We believe that religion and family are the foundations of a free society. We believe that a nation without borders is not a nation. We believe in tradition and the rule of law. These are ideas that will save Western civilization, Trump said back in 2023 during a press conference in Budapest. It is globalism with all its undeniable advantages that exacerbates economic inequality in society, threatens national cultures, and provokes conflicts. Take the same environmental organization, Greenpeace. Some of her initiatives are useful and aimed at eliminating environmental problems. And here's the other part. Greenpeace sponsors many companies, among which there are those who want to get rid of competitors by the hands of environmentalists, shut down harmful production, or issue a fine to some oil refining plant. Let's take some more of Trump's favorite, WHO. At the insistence of the organization, a fairly harsh lockdown was introduced in most developed countries during COVID-19. This is still controversial in the political and medical communities. Were such radical methods really necessary? Have they led to more negative consequences than positive ones? In some countries where severe lockdowns were introduced, the economy has not yet recovered from their consequences. Or let's take a look at how the globalists' inclusive policies have affected the world. Here's an example in the entertainment industry. Such giants as Netflix, Disney, Warner Brothers, and others simply have to have a certain set of employees and their staff. The same goes for all the content they produce. Racial diversity and inclusion are great, but not when a story about a half-Asian, half-black boy with a disability is told just to please his creditors, and not in the name of art. As a result, such content fails massively at the box office and on streaming services. Entertainment giants had to close their inclusive departments, and now, with the arrival of Trump, they are reviewing their policies in this regard. It turns out that under globalism, a select few inevitably end up at the top, who own most of the wealth and power. They dictate to the majority what rules to live by, who to be friends with and feud with, what to buy, and what to want. It is precisely this phenomenon that Trump wants to eradicate. Well, if, of course, you believe his words. The President of America himself is among those elected who have succeeded thanks to globalism. And it is unlikely that his intentions are so pure that he just wants to help all the poor and punish all the rich. But even Trump, the president of the most economically powerful country in the world, cannot defeat the globalists alone. They have huge bureaucratic resources. But we are not in a movie where a brave loner defeats a crowd of villains. That is why Trump wants to strike at NATO, the world's most important military alliance. Currently, 65% of the NATO budget is provided by the United States, while Germany makes the largest contribution of the European Union to this, about 6.5%. Trump often says that Europe should take care of its own security and not live under the defense hood of America. But the Europeans, as you might guess, don't really want to spend even more money on their defense, hence the conflict. Well, that's good. What does Greenland have to do with it? First, by taking away a large and strategically important piece of territory from Denmark, a NATO country, Trump will simply force the leadership of the alliance to react to this event in some way. Let's be honest, Europe is unlikely to go to war with America, and then the legitimacy of NATO and its expediency will be in serious question. Why do we need an organization for the protection of Europe that is unable to protect it? And then our Donald will come up with a draft of some new military alliance that will function according to different principles, which Trump will like, of course. The same scheme can be done with the UN. After the possible withdrawal of Greenland, representatives of the organization will express deep concern about this step by America, and the United States will quietly leave the UN, dragging other major countries with it. Together with them, a new structure can be created and a globalist Europe can be confronted. And hardly anyone can do anything to America here. What kind of sanctions, what kind of military aggression against the most powerful and developed country in the world? And you're also asking why Trump finds it so easy to get along with Russian President Vladimir Putin. He also likes to blame globalists for everything and openly opposes them. We will continue to observe Donald Trump's attempts to overturn the world order. Will he be able to do this in just 4 years of his presidency? And what goals does he really pursue? It's impossible to say for sure yet, but it's an exciting site. More interesting than any Netflix.